To Kill a Mockingbird, Reader's Digest version, Chapter 4, Part 3. Someone was booming again. Mayella Violet Ewell. A young girl walked to the witness stand to be sworn. When she sat facing us in the witness chair, she appeared a thick-bodied girl accustomed to strenuous labor. In Macomb County, it was easy to tell when someone bathed regularly as opposed to yearly lavations. Mr. Ewell had a scalded look, as if an overnight soaking had deprived him of protective layers of dirt. But Mayella looked as if she tried to keep clean, and I was reminded of the red geraniums in the Ewell yard. Mr. Gilmer asked Mayella to tell the jury, just in her own words, please, what happened on the evening of November 21st. Mayella sat silently. "Where were you at dusk on that evening?" began Mr. Gilmer patiently. "On the porch." "What were you doing on the porch?" "Nothing." Judge Taylor said, "Just tell us what happened." Mayella stared at him and burst into tears. Judge Taylor let her cry for a while. Then he said, "That's enough now. All this is strange to you, I know, but you've nothing to be ashamed of and nothing to fear. What are you scared of?" Mayella sobbed, pointing at Atticus. "Him! Don't want him doing me like he done Papa." Judge Taylor scratched his thick white hair. "How old are you?" 19 and a half, Mayella said. Judge Taylor tried unsuccessfully to speak in soothing tones. "Mr. Finch has no idea of scaring you," he growled, "and if he did, I'm here to stop him. Now, you're a big girl, so you just sit up straight and tell us what happened to you. You can do that, can't you?" Mollified, Mayella gave Atticus a final terrified glance and said to Mr. Gilmer, "Well, sir, I was on the porch and he come along, and you see there was this old chifferobe in the yard Papa brought in to chop up for kindling. Papa told me to do it while he was off in the woods, but I wasn't feeling strong enough then, so he came by." "Who is he?" Mayella pointed to Tom Robinson. "That and yonder, Robinson." "Then what happened?" "I said, 'Come here, boy, and bust up this chifferobe. I got a nickel for you.' So he come in the yard, and I went in the house to get him the nickel, and I turned around, and 'fore I knew it, he was on me. Run up behind me, he did. He got me round the neck, cussing and saying dirt. I fought and hollered, but he hit me again and again." Mr. Gilmer waited for Mayella to collect herself. She had twisted her handkerchief into a sweaty rope. She waited for Mr. Gilmer to ask another question, but when he didn't, she said, "He chunked me on the floor and choked me and took advantage of me." "Did you scream and fight back?" asked Mr. Gilmer. "I reckon I did. Kicked and hollered for all I was worth." "Then what happened?" "I don't remember too good, but next thing I knew, Papa was in the room hollering, 'Who done it?' Then I sort of fainted, and the next thing I knew, Mr. Tate was pulling me up off of the floor." Apparently, Mayella's recital had given her confidence, but it was not her father's brash kind. There was something stealthy about her, like a steady-eyed cat with a twitchy tail. "Are you positive that he took full advantage of you?" asked Mr. Gilmer. Mayella's face contorted, and I was afraid that she would cry again. Instead, she said, "He'd done what he was after." "That's all for the time being," Mr. Gilmer said pleasantly, "but you stay there. I expect big bad Mr. Finch has some questions to ask you." "State will not prejudice the witness against counsel for the defense," murmured Judge Taylor primly, "at least not at this time." Atticus got up grinning, but instead of walking to the witness stand, he opened his coat and hooked his thumbs in his vest. Then he walked slowly across the room to the windows. He looked out, and then he turned and strolled back to the witness stand. "Miss Mayella," he said, smiling, "how old are you?" "Said I was 19, said it to the judge yonder." "So you did, ma'am. You'll have to bear with me, Miss Mayella. I'm getting along and can't remember as well as I used to. I might ask you things you've already said before, but you'll give me an answer, won't you? Good." I could see nothing in Mayella's expression to justify Atticus' assumption that he had secured her wholehearted cooperation. She was looking at him furiously. "Won't answer a word you say as long as you keep on mocking me and making fun of me," she said. "Ma'am?" asked Atticus, startled. Judge Taylor said, Mr. Finch is not making fun of you. What's the matter with you? Mayella looked from under lowered eyelids at Atticus, but she said to the judge, long as he keeps on calling me ma'am and saying Miss Mayella, I don't have to take his sass. Atticus resumed his stroll to the windows and let Judge Taylor handle this one. Mr. Finch is always courteous to everybody, the judge told Mayella. He's not trying to mock you. He's trying to be polite. He leaned back. Atticus, let's get on. I wondered if anybody had ever called Mayella ma'am or Miss Mayella in her life. Probably not, as she took offense to routine courtesy. What on earth was her life like? I soon found out. You say you're 19, Atticus resumed. How many sisters and brothers have you? He walked from the windows back to the stand. 7, she said. How long has your mother been dead? Don't know. Long time. How long did you go to school? 2 year? 3 year? Read and write good as Papa yonder. Slowly but surely, Atticus built up before the jury a picture of the Ewells' home life. The jury learned the following things. Their relief check was far from enough to feed the family, and there was strong suspicion that Papa drank it up anyway. He sometimes went off in the swamp for days and came home sick. The weather was seldom cold enough to require shoes, but when it was, you could make dandy ones from strips of old tires. The family hauled its water in buckets from a spring that ran out at one end of the dump. The younger children had perpetual colds and suffered from chronic ground itch. There was a lady who came around sometimes and asked Mayella why the children didn't stay in school. With 2 members of the family reading and writing, there was no need for the others to learn. Papa needed them at home. Miss Mayella, said Atticus, a 19-year-old girl like you must have friends. Who are your friends? The witness frowned as if puzzled. Friends? Yes. Don't you know anyone near your age? Boys and girls? Mayella's hostility, which had subsided to grudging neutrality, flared again. You making fun of me again, Mr. Finch? Atticus let her question answer his. Do you love your father, Miss Mayella? Was his next. Love him? What you mean? I mean, is he good to you? Is he easy to get along with? He does tolerable, except when... Except when? Mayella looked at her father, who had been sitting with his chair tipped against the railing. He sat up straight and waited for her to answer. Except when nothing, said Mayella. I said he does tolerable. Ewell leaned back again. Except when he's drinking? Asked Atticus so gently that Mayella nodded. Does he ever go after you? Has he ever beaten you? Mayella looked around, down at the court reporter, up at the judge. Answer the question, Miss Mayella, said the judge. My pa's never touched a hair of head in my life. Atticus pushed his glasses up on his nose. We've had a good visit, Miss Mayella, and now I guess we'd better get to the case. You say you asked Tom Robinson to come chop up a chifferobe. Was Tom Robinson well known to you? I knowed who he was. He passed the house every day. Was this the first time you asked him to come inside the fence? Mayella jumped slightly at the question. Yes, it was. Didn't you ever ask him to come inside the fence before? She was prepared now. I did not. I certainly did not. One did not's good enough, said Atticus. You never asked him to do odd jobs for you before? I mighta, conceded Mayella. Can you remember any other occasions? No. All right, now to what happened. You said Tom Robinson was behind you in the room when you turned around, that right? Yes. Atticus's memory had suddenly become accurate. You said he choked me and took advantage of me, is that right? That's what I said. Do you remember him beating you about the face? The witness was silent. She seemed to be trying to get something clear to herself. It's an easy question, Miss Mayella, so I'll try again. Atticus's voice had lost its comfortableness. Do you remember him beating you about the face? No, I don't recollect. I mean, yes, I do. He hit me. Was your last sentence your answer? Huh? Yes, he hit. I just don't remember. It all happened so quick. Judge Taylor looked sternly at Mayella. "Don't you cry, young woman," he began, but Atticus said, "Let her cry if she wants to, Judge. We've got all the time in the world." Mayella sniffed wrathfully and looked at Atticus. "Get me up here and mock me, will you? I'll answer any question you got." "That's fine," said Atticus. "There are only a few more, Miss Mayella. I want you to be sure you have the right man. Will you identify the man who took advantage of you?" "That's him right yonder." Atticus turned to the defendant. "Tom, stand up. Let Miss Mayella have a good long look at you. Is this the right man, Miss Mayella?" Tom Robinson's powerful shoulders rippled under his thin shirt. He rose to his feet and stood with his right hand on the back of his chair. He looked oddly off balance, but it was not from the way he was standing. His left arm was 12 inches shorter than his right and hung dead at his side. It ended in a small, shriveled hand, and even from the balcony I could see that it was no use to him. "Scout," breathed Jim. "Look, Reverend, he's crippled." Reverend Sykes leaned across me and whispered to Jim, "He got it caught in a cotton gin when he was a boy." Atticus said, "Is this the man who attacked you?" "It most certainly is." Atticus's next question was one word long. "How?" "I don't know how he done it, but he done it. I said it all happened so fast. Now let's consider this calmly, Miss Mayella. You've testified that the defendant choked and beat you. You didn't say that he sneaked up behind you and knocked you out cold, but that you turned around and there he was." Atticus emphasized his words by tapping his knuckles on his table. "Do you wish to reconsider any of your testimony?" "You want me to say something that didn't happen?" "No, ma'am, I want you to say what did happen. You testified that you turned around and there he was. He choked you then?" "Yes." "Then he released your throat and hit you." "I said he did." "He blacked your right eye with his right fist?" "He must have aimed at my left. I ducked and his fist glanced and hit my right. That's what it did." Mayella had finally seen the light. "You're becoming suddenly clear on this point. A while ago, you couldn't remember too well, could you? All right, he choked you, he hit you, then he assaulted you. You're a strong girl. What were you doing all the time? Just standing there?" "I told ya I hollered and kicked and fought." Now Atticus rained questions on her. "All right, why didn't you run?" "I tried to." "Tried to? What kept you from doing it?" I He slung me down. That's what he did. He slung me down." "You were screaming all this time?" "I certainly was." "Then why didn't the other children hear you? Why didn't your screams make them come running?" No answer. "Or didn't you scream until you saw your father in the window?" No answer. "Did you scream first at your father instead of at Tom Robinson? Was that it?" No answer. "Who beat you up, Tom Robinson or your father?" No answer. "What did your father really see? The crime of rape or the best defense Tom Robinson could have against the charge? Why don't you tell the truth, child? Didn't Bob Ewell beat you up?" When Atticus turned away from Mayella, he looked like his stomach hurt. But Mayella's face was a mixture of terror and fury. Atticus sat down wearily and polished his glasses with his handkerchief. Suddenly, Mayella became articulate. "I got something to say," she said. "Then I ain't going to say no more. That man yonder took advantage of me, and if you fine, fancy gentlemen don't want to do nothing about it, then you're all yellow, stinking cowards." Then Mayella burst into real tears. Her shoulders shook with angry sobs, and she answered no more questions, even when Mr. Gilmer tried to get her back on the track. Somehow, Atticus had hit her hard in a way that was not clear to me, but it gave him no pleasure to do so. He sat down with his head down, and I never saw anybody glare at anyone with the hatred Mayella showed when she left the stand and walked by Atticus's table. When Mr. Gilmer told Judge Taylor that the state rested, Judge Taylor said, "It's time we all did. We'll take 10 minutes." Atticus and Mr. Gilmer left the courtroom by a door behind the witness stand, which was a signal for us all to stretch. I discovered that I was numb. We got up and yawned, and Reverend Sykes wiped his face. The temperature was an easy 90, he said. As a rule, a recess meant a general exodus, but today people weren't leaving. Mr. Braxton Underwood, who had been sitting in a chair reserved for the press, allowed his bitter eyes to rove over the colored balcony, and they met mine. He gave a snort and looked away. "Jim," I said, "Mr. Underwood's seen us." "That's okay. He won't tell Atticus." Presently, Judge Taylor returned and climbed into a swivel chair. Atticus and Mr. Gilmer came back, and Judge Taylor looked at his watch. "It's getting on to 4," he said. "Can we wind this up this afternoon, Atticus?" "I think we can," said Atticus. "How many witnesses you got?" "One." "Well, call him."